Leeds International School, Form 4, First Term, English Language, Story of an Hour. Story of an Hour, ITCSE English 91, page 256 to 259. Objectives: how to analyze a text, how to find out themes and techniques, how to answer exam-style questions. Content: Kate Chopin, summary, techniques, exam-style questions, references. Kate Chopin, born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1851 to a French Creole parentage on her mother's side and Irish parentage on her father's side. From an early age, she learned about St. Louis French domination through her great-grandmother's tales. So, she was influenced by the tales of the settling of the first French inhabitants in St. Louis, therefore giving way to various pieces of work inspired by the Acadian colonial epoch in the era. Although many of the Chopin's short stories dealt with positive aspects of feminism, some of her most notable works dealt with serious taboo topics for its time like adultery and divorce. The Story of an Hour is considered one of her most significant pieces of work. The story starts when Miss Mallard gets the news of her husband's death by word of her sister Josephine. At first she feels completely devastated by the news, but then these feelings shift from complete hopelessness to extreme hopefulness within Louise Mallard, only to finish with a heart attack due to a joy that kills. A few seconds after her husband arrives home with his suitcase, without knowing there had been a fatal accident in the first place. She is the protagonist in the story and the only dynamic character that appears in the whole plot. After she hears the news of her husband's death, she falls on a state of pure sadness. But then, after a moment of reflection, she realizes that a new, free and independent life has just started for her. And that's when the shift among her emotions begin in the story, therefore becoming a round character. Brenton Mallard. He is one of the three flat characters that appear on the story. He is Louise's husband and he is presumed to have passed away in the story as he was involved in a railroad disaster and with his name leading the list of killed. Josephine Mallard. She is the second flat character that appears in the story and plays the role of Louis' sister. She is the first person who tells her of her husband's presumed death. At first, she tries to calm Louis down after the former tries to cope with the devastating news, but then starts to become more worried of her sister's sanity when she gets inside her room and starts screaming, "Free, free, free." Richards. He is described as the Brenton Mallard's friend in the story and he is also the last flat character that appears in the plot. The only actions he performs in the whole plot are to tell Josephine and Brenton Mallard's death, and to be the first person who sees Brenton Mallard enter the house after her wife's outbreak. Setting. The story may take place in a small mansion in England, probably at the time in which Chopin published the manuscript around the year 1894. Type of narrator. The narrator in this story is considered to be omniscient. Since throughout the plot the reader is able to see the characters' feelings and emotions, which makes it a clear indicator of the presence of this type of narrator. Figurative language, Epiphany. This can be seen in the story when Miss Mallard realizes that with the passing of her husband, she is now able to start a new phase in her life, and that is visibly portrayed to the reader when she utters the words, "Free, free, free." The delicious breath of rain was in the air. In this, the author gives a meteorological event, something that is generally believed as inanimate, the capacity to breathe, therefore humanizing the event. In the story, this can be perceived when the author writes it was her sister Josephine who told her in broken sentences the news of her husband's death. In broken sentences tries to exemplify how Josephine attempted to give the news to her sister. Simile. In this case, it is important to look for comparisons between events happening in the real world and the ideas. One example can be seen in this extract. There was a feverish triumph in her eyes, and she carried herself unwittingly like a goddess of victory. Imagery. One example of this literary device can be seen when she begins to realize the implication of her husband's death on her life. Now her bosom rose and felt tumultuously. It can also be found in this section when Mrs. Mallard begins to utter a few words after her initial shock. When she abandoned herself, a little whispered word escaped her slightly parted lips, which appeals to our sense of hearing because it tells the reader the way in which she is uttering this word. Symbolism. There is a strong sense of symbolism found in the way men treated their wives during the Victorian era. One example of how women felt towards men's chauvinistic attitude can be seen in this extract. There would be no one to live for during those coming years. She would live for herself. Connotation. This aspect of the short story is analyzed in the sense of the protagonist's attitude towards her husband's death. Throughout the story, there are certain hints that indicate the actual joy that Josephine felt once the news finally sunk in. She knew that she would weep again when she saw the kind, tender hands folded in death, the face that had never looked save with love upon her, fixed and grey and dead. Here we could understand that she will be pleased to see her husband's lifeless body in a coffin. The tone of this text is ironical. Themes. We can come up with various themes by referring to this text. Few of them are time, identity, the forbidden joy of independence, the inherent oppressiveness of marriage, women in 19th century society, freedom and independence, love and marriage. Questions. Please do the following exercises in page 259. For further information, please refer to the following references. That's the end of the lesson. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you.